guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Johanna, and for those of you who are new here, welcome. And for those of you who are returning, welcome back. Here on my channel, I do planner and planner related videos, DIY tutorials, budget videos, and the occasional new release video of items that I've listed to my Etsy shop. And if that is of interest to you, please consider subscribing to my channel. And if you hit that little notification bell, you'll always be notified of when I load a new video. Commenting, liking, and sharing does help my channel grow and would be truly appreciated. All right, so it's Monday night after work. I do know better than to do tutorials or just any kind of videos after work, but I am seriously on a time crunch, so we're just going to get into this. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make 3 different laminated envelopes with 2 pieces of 12 by 12 paper. Now, when it comes to the paper, I actually recommend something that is only one-sided, just because then you won't have to choose between the design, but also something that's actually fairly light. So for this brand, and I can get this both on Amazon as well as Walmart, the Colorbach brand, in the single-sided paperweight, because they do have a few collections that are double-sided. This is basically copier paper weight, and for the envelopes, I think that works perfectly because it gives it a little bit of flexibility. Now, in some of my tutorial videos, I try to give you different options if you don't have certain tools. This is not going to be one of these videos. I'm going to show you exactly what it is that I do to make the envelopes that I put into my shop. Now, I market them as cash envelopes, but really they're just laminated envelopes, because one of them I actually don't use as a cash envelope. I just use it as a way to store my templates. Okay, so you're going to want to choose your 2 pieces of paper. I'm going to choose one now because I've already started this, and I'll show you what I mean by that in a minute. And because this is not directional, it doesn't matter which way I cut it. And so the first cut that you're going to want to make is the width of the envelope. Now, if I can get the corresponding blog post completed, because again, guys, seriously, there is no time for me right now, then I will do so. Otherwise, I'll just put the dimensions in the description box. But the first cut that you want to do is at 7 inches. Now put this excess to the side. We are going to use it, but we're not going to use it right now. And then you want to turn it to whatever side, because again, it isn't directional, so it doesn't matter, but if your paper is, be aware of that. And hopefully you're not following along. You're going to watch the tutorial and then get your supplies together, because that does make a difference. Now the second cut you're going to do is at 7.75. So 7.75, and we're going to cut, and we're going to put this to the side. Now, again, I keep harping on the fact that this isn't directional, but that is important. So we want to make sure that we are on the 7-inch side that's facing up, and I'm going to use my corner chomper. Any corner chomper will work, at least in this part of it. If you have one of those, I don't want to say flimsy, but if you have one of those flimsy corner rounders, it'll work on the paper, but it won't work when you go and cut the laminate, or it probably won't. So the reason why I want to make sure that I cut with the 7-inch side facing up, so that this is the long side, is because just by looking at it, it looks almost square, and I don't want to get it mixed up, because it does make a difference down the road. So what you want is 7 inches across, because that will hold a standard US bill. If you're international, then this may not work for you, but if you are here in the US, or if your size of your currency is similar, this will work. So 7 inches that way, 7.75 that way. So that's envelope number 1. And then we're going to put this to the side. I've already actually made a set, so these 2 pieces will go to the side as well. And why aren't they the same size? I'm just going to cut them down to the same size. I mean, I should have had automatically 2 pieces of paper at the same size, but I didn't. I can't figure out why right now, and I'm not going to try. Now, what I do recommend is you use complementary papers, because this is going to form an envelope. So you want to make sure that if you're using a paper pad, you use something that looks pretty good together. This not so much, but I mean, it gives you an idea, right? And then for this sheet, you have some options. You can either make an envelope that is this wide, which is 4.5 inches wide, or you can cut it down and make an envelope that is 3.5 inches wide. Now, if you are using this just to stuff cash or whatever, then you may want to choose this one, although you will have a little bit of wastage. With this one, it actually still does give you some room if you are in a Happy Planner system or ring bound system to punch on the side and yet still have enough room on the side. So this one is 4.5 wide, so we're going to measure this 4.5 wide. Make sure it's lined up. And again, it's just going to have a little bit of wastage, and I'm just going to toss that. Alrighty, so the next step is, again, because this is not directional, I'm just going to punch one end of it. Doesn't matter which one for this paper. However, I do have some examples. So for like this one, I mean, it is directional, and you would think that the side that I should have punched would have been up here, because when you're looking at the flowers are standing up. However, this is going to be the closure. So when you are punching your sides, you actually kind of want to test it out. Well, what side's going to fold over? Because if we had punched this side, that would be on your flap. Now, it doesn't look bad, but this one looks better. Again, this one, the direction is up to interpretation, because your flowers could be growing up, but then your flowers could be growing down like in a vine style on a building. But something like this, where there are words, again, you'd think, well, I have to round the top up there. But if that had been rounded, your flap would be, the writing on your flap would be upside down. So the way that this is cut is the punch is there, and so when I go ahead and fold it over, then that's what's going to be on the flap. Now, because of that, this is going to be upside down. There's no way around that. But I'm not looking at the back of my envelopes when I'm looking at envelopes. I'm looking at the front because I'm either stuffing things in or taking things out. So that is not a concern to me. Okay, and then again, with paper that is not inherently directional, then it doesn't matter. With the cherries, because the cherry stems, I believe, should be at the top, I've rounded it so that that would be the top of the envelope. Okay, so again, the direction does matter, and you may need to play around and test that because of that. And I've had to toss a few because I didn't take into account the direction, and it just wasn't going to be working for my needs. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to take your long piece, either at the 3.5 that you made to make a thin envelope, or the 4.5 to make the thicker envelope. Again, you're the designer, you get to choose, but you want to score this, and both of the scores for either width is exactly the same. So for this one, you're going to want to score it at 6.5. And so 6.5 right there. And see, I already did that wrong because the punch side should have actually been the top and not the part that we're folding over. It doesn't really hurt it, but what happens is when you laminate it, you've got that little funky edge right there. Again, you can still use it, it's just, that's not how I normally do it, but I wasn't paying attention on how I scored it. Because really, when I was scoring it, I should have had the score up here. No, I should have had the score down here, and I don't know if it's even in frame, because this is where the score was, and we folded it 6.5, and it's not exactly the right way. This one, however, this one you want to put the punched edge to the right, because we want to score at 3, and then we want to score at 6 1/8. Oh. Okay, and then for this one, you want to fold over the bottom flap and keep it folded. You want to fold over your top flap. And I didn't want to break my paper, so my score is not that deep. But this one you want to keep open. Now, I don't know if you can see it, but there is a gap between the top of the paper here and the fold line, and that's intentional, and I'll show you why once it's laminated. Now, if you are just making this for your own purposes and you don't need it labeled, then you can just put it in a laminating sheet now. But because this is either going to be someone's cash envelope, because eventually I will put this in my shop, or this will be just an envelope that they're using for whatever purposes, I'm going to put a label on here before I laminate it. And that way, once the lamination is on it, this becomes sort of like a dry erase board where you can write on it with a Sharpie permanent pen, and then if you need to, you can take it off. Now, I get this usually from Walmart, but they were running out, and I was only able to ever find this in one particular Walmart on Island, so I actually ordered from Amazon, and I probably have dozens of these boxes, because once I get into envelope making mode, I can go through this quite quickly. So, but again, I've also used colorful boxes, my sticker book from Happy Planner. You can put like a little piece of white paper. I mean, it doesn't really matter. It just really depends on what your purposes are, but I just really like the look of these. So I also want to put it on here. And I don't know if this is going to be punched, so I am still going to center this. Although, if it is punched, and I won't do it, you know, if my customer purchases this and they want to punch it, awesome. But it will be a little off-centered, but again, it is a handmade item. Okay, so that's all we need this for. And then for the last envelope, we're just going to put these two pieces of paper. Again, because it is single-sided, we want the pattern to be facing outwards. It doesn't matter, again, because it is not directional. I am going to butt the two edges across from each other, and then just put a little bit of tape. It isn't necessary, but that's the way that I do it, so I want to show you guys the way that I do it. And there, and there, and then fold that up. And again, you want to put a label, doesn't matter which side. You actually want to bring some black to this one. And just put it right there. Now for this one, I do recommend using some sort of indicator, because once this is laminated, you really don't know what the top is. Now, that doesn't really matter, except it it kind of defeats the purpose of taping these together if we're going to slice this open. So I like using something to show me, yep, that's more the top because it's closer to the top there. Now for laminating sheets, I actually recommend the Walmart stuff. But the Walmart 3mm paper is actually a thinner weight laminate than the Scotch brand laminating paper. And even though it both says 3mm, I've noticed that this one is just a lighter weight. And again, I think it makes a difference in a good way, because I wouldn't make this into a traveler's notebook because it doesn't have the sturdiness. But I like the fact that it does make it really flexible, which actually makes it easy for you to get in and out of. So if you can get a hold of the Walmart stuff, I would definitely recommend it. The Scotch stuff does work. So I don't want to say if that's all you have, then you know you can't make it. But I prefer this one when I'm making cash envelopes. Now, for the placement in your envelope or in your laminating sheet, this one, obviously, you're going to just sandwich in there. This one, you're going to have this side folded over, but this side folded up because you want that to be laminated and you want that to be laminated and you want that to be laminated. So whatever is being touched by the laminating sheet will get that. And that just makes it a little bit sturdier than if you were to laminate it closed like that, because in theory you could cut there, but I don't recommend it. Okay. And so let me get that one back up. And then for this one, we would just put this one just as is, no special instructions. Just because I didn't want to waste my laminate, I just used one of those ones I showed you, and I'm going to stick this in here as well. And then I'm going to run this through the laminating machine. Alrighty, so I've got 4 of them here. I mean, I'm literally looking at it and I had to think about how much I actually had here. So what I'm going to do is we're going to cut these down. And depending on where you are in your journey with me, cutting through laminate or heavy cardstock or plastic eventually will dull your blades. Now, it still works perfectly fine on other laminated plastic heavy cardstock, but some of the thinner weight paper, once your blade goes rather dull, then it actually can shred it. So you may want to designate your blades once it becomes dull, and then just keep them to the side so that when you are cutting your paper that isn't too thick and isn't too taxing on your blade, then you can use your sharper stuff. And then when you're using it for like laminate or plastic or some of the heavier duty projects, then you can swap it out. Now, I did have one of those rotary blade cutters, but I actually found that this style of blade works better for me. One, I get a better cut, plus it's not so hard on my hands because I do have, more so in my knees, but I do have a touch of arthritis, so that's the reason why I can't do any hand quilting, because I used to make Hawaiian quilts when I was younger. I mean, never full-time or professionally, I like doing it, but it's not something I can do anymore. So if you are in the market for a cutter, I definitely recommend one of these. Plus it's really easy to switch this in and out because it just slides right in. And I always have a supply of these at the ready just because I do so much paper crafting. All right, so for these, we cut around, actually could probably cut a little bit more because the bubble is so tight because the paper is so thin. The thinner your paper, the better a seal your laminate can get. The thicker it gets, the harder it is to for the machine to suck right close to that. So I've cut just pretty evenly around the envelope. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slice the top off, and don't need to measure it, but on my cutter there's this wire, and so that's what I'm going to line it up to. Plus I can sort of see it down here, and that's what's going to open our envelope. And then the rest I'm going to want to take into account that little bubble. And I guess because it is such a tight seal, instead of doing a little bit of a gap like I have been doing, I can put the paper right up to the edge of the white, because that still does leave a little bit of a gap there. I don't know if you can see it because it's clear, but there is a little bit of a gap. And really, that you would do on a case-by-case basis, because depending on how tight your bubble is, that makes a difference on where you're cutting. So we've got 3 envelopes, and we're gonna do 4 envelopes. And then technically this is the 5th envelope. Now when I do these for my shop, I'm doing them in bulk. So at any given time, I could be doing 20 or 30 of these, just because I sort of assembly line it. So if you've ever noticed in my shop, depending on the timing of what I can get out, I might have a set of these in a style, and then you might see the corresponding in these in the same style. And that's just because when I'm cutting, that's just what I get out of the paper weight, because I mean I have to buy all the supplies, so I'm going to get as much bang for my buck as I can. So from those 2 pieces of 12 by 12 paper, we were able to get 5 envelopes. Now with 3 laminates, you get 6 envelopes, but again, depending on what you're doing for this, you're just going to want to try to place it as close as possible, but not too close. Now, we are not done. It is a process. Now again, if you do have some of those lighter weight paper punch, I have found that, because I've had some and I've broken them, that they just don't work on the laminate. Now some people don't round it off, but even with this lighter weight laminate, that is a very sharp point. And I just, for my own personal reasons, I don't want to have that as an issue. So I'm going to round it out, and I'm just doing the corner or the 1/4 inch round. And even with this one, I want to round that off, but I don't want to round it before I laminate it, because really I'm just trying to get rid of that sharp edge. So these are, oh no, this one is done. This one is not. And then I'm gonna round these sides as well. And this is the last one. And if you are looking to invest in craft tools, number one, I would say get the cutter, because for me personally, I don't like measuring, and I cannot cut a straight line, even if I have a straight line drawn out. So I think that is invaluable. I couldn't do my crafting without it. The second tool, because they are kind of pricey, they're like $20, $30, I would recommend the corner chomper, just because I use this pretty much in every paper crafting item that I put in my shop. All right, so this is the one that is absolutely done right now. These need a little bit of work. Now, because these need less work, we're going to start with this. Now, obviously, as an envelope, this does not work because we can't get into it. So very lightly, you're going to want to cut the seal on this, but you don't want to cut so hard that you're going to cut through the back of the paper. So it pops open. So now you can put some cash in there, but there is no hole back here, okay? So that is something, it's better to go lightly than too heavy, because if you cut through, then basically you've just sliced through like this, and then you won't have that little flap there. I mean, and it's not necessary, but this actually is the height of the bill, not this colored paper right there. And for this one, because it's not so deep, you can actually get into it and slide your fingers. If you were to match it so that it was just a full 6 inches, it can be a little bit difficult to get to the bottom because my fingers go to about there. Okay, so again, that's up to you. So again, this one, we want to just slice, and because I made that error by putting up the rounded corners, if you can see, and that to me does not look as professional as a squared off corner like that. Now, it's not so egregious an error that I'm not going to put this in my shop eventually, but it just, for my purposes, I'm not a huge fan of that. Again, envelope open. Now this one, it's similar in that we're going to cut there at the line. And we're really just skimming, and what we're doing is we're breaking the seal where the bubble is, because there is a bubble there. And then we're going to open that up, and we'll do the same for this one. Now, if you were worried, you could use a ruler and then cut a straight edge, but I've never needed to do that. Again, you do what works for you. For this particular step, however, I want to go back and score. And I'm not really putting it up to a measurement as much as I'm looking at the score that we did before and then just lining that with one of these grooves, because I want to rescore that so that it makes it easy to fold. Now the reason why we put a little bit of a gap is because, again, I don't know if you can see it because it is clear and on white, but the shiny part actually goes all the way to the edge. Any place where there's paper on paper, this inside of the envelope obviously is not laminated. And I have found that if I score right at the edge here, then it doesn't make it look as finished. Now, depending on how thick your paper is, that little lip there, that little part of the laminate that goes below the score can actually sometimes start to lift, but what I'll do is I'll go in with some clear tape and then just tape it down because it doesn't hurt it, it looks ugly. And then I will fold this down. I could use my bone folder, which is right in there, but don't need to. And we are still not done. So let me score this one. Let me get this out of the way, and then I'll bring you guys back. All right, so we are nearly there. And to be perfectly honest, I think these plaid fabric ones are really pretty. I'm definitely gonna have to make some more of these, although that's not going to happen before the holidays. All right, so I do buy these from Amazon. I'll link them below, but if you're not doing tons and tons of envelopes, then just go to Walmart or the Dollar Tree or whatever and just get them there in a fewer quantity. But this came in a roll of, it was either, I think it was $2.50 per side, and I'm nearly done. I actually already have a backup, and that's how many envelopes that I've made. So what I like to do is I like to make strips of this. And the reason why there's two sides is you've got the one with the teeth and you've got the one with the like little furry part. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So since I have 2 more left of the last batch that I did, what I do is I'm aware of what's the teeth, which is that one, and what's the furry part. And it doesn't really make a difference, but I'm fussy like that. And so if I put the teeth down on the top, then I want to do the same on the other side. Although again, it does not matter. It really does not. And then I put it on the top with both of them stuck together, because then all I need to do is fold down, and then I know that it's perfectly placed. Now the reason why I like working off of the sheets here is because this is just a little cumbersome. So what I do, and again, if you're not buying huge rolls of it, then it doesn't matter, but if you are, what I'll do is I'll unroll and I'll cut a piece. It doesn't matter which side, whether it's the furry part or the teeth part. And then I'll move this out of the way. And then I'll line this up because I want to make sure I just have the same amount of dots. And I'll cut that. And I'll put that to the side. And then I'll very carefully line these up. And I just find it much more manageable to do it in little blocks like this than if I were to do the whole roll. And then whenever I make anything that requires a velcro, then I can just take this out versus having to deal with this. And then again, and see, the reason why I'm looking at that is it's kind of lifting a little bit. So what I mentioned about the Scotch tape is, and I like buying the transparent gloss finish. That is my favorite type of tape, because you're not going to write in here. It doesn't hurt the product or anything like that. But I would just put a piece in and then just kind of secure down that little piece. And because it does look so much like the laminate, no one's the wiser. And again, I'm not trying to pull a fast one on my customers. Again, aesthetically, it looks ugly, but functionally, it works perfectly. But this way, we can both be secure in the knowledge that they're getting a good product. Because I just want it to sit flat. And you can't tell that there's tape in there unless you do it like that. And that's actually never happened to me before, but as I've mentioned, when you're filming tutorials, it is an awkward angle to put things in because I'm more concerned that you guys can see things versus that I can see things. And again, from your perspective, I don't know if you can tell that there's a difference, but it just looks like there's laminate under there when really it's just Scotch tape. And then to finish this out, we are going to put our Velcro. And again, it doesn't necessarily mean that the teeth have to be on the bottom, because in this one, the furry part I put right here. It's just both of these. Oh, that's not a good placement. Oh, and that's not coming up, so that's how it's going to be. So we'll put that down, and then we'll bring it back up. So again, it doesn't matter what side is on what side. I just like to have them match. Although, to be honest, I would have liked this higher up, but it still opens and it still closes. All right, guys. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 envelopes as promised. And this is from 2 pieces of 12 by 12 paper. And again, the other piece of that is the back of that. Okay. All right. Now, as I mentioned, I put this in my Etsy shop as budget envelopes. And so eventually there's probably going to be 3 more similar to this, and this will be a set. And then I'll have these grouped together, and this will be a set. Now these I don't sell as sets just because I can't get the same number out because it's using 2 different pieces of paper, and so these I usually put in as just one-offs. For this one, you could have chosen to seal the edges and cut the top, but I like this way better. And I leave it chunky like that just because that's the natural offshoot of that piece right there. I don't have to cut anything down. And I mean, it's definitely bigger than money, but you could also put in stickers in here or just, you know, whatever. All right, guys, I hope this video was helpful. And my viewer, ever so humbled, I'm hoping this is what you were looking for. This is what I had sent to Kelly in her Happy Mail like a few months ago. And then if you do attach this to your Happy Planner, whether it's the classic or the Happy Nietzsche or the big, because this will fit, then you can attach this to your front cover with some Velcro, and then you always have an attached pocket. Well, that's it for this video. I actually have to film one more. Again, I am running out of time, guys. So thank you for being so patient with me. Thank you so much for following me on this journey. And as always, aloha.